Hello everyone, welcome to After Effects Lesson 2. Before we get into our content, I just want to go over a few announcements. So just to let everybody know about the new grading scheme. So since I've had to eliminate a whole module project, I had to redistribute those points to the assignments category. So now demos that I do in the lecture series will count as assignments. So for example, in After Effects Lesson 2, there's going to be 2 demos and then 1 assignment that you do on your own. But all 3 of those, so the 2 demos and the 1 assignment you do on your own, are all going to count for points. So just to make that clear. Also, I've changed the deadline of these assignment submissions and demo submissions from Thursday nights by midnight to Friday afternoons by 2. That's because I wanted to coincide with the virtual office hours that I'm going to hold when we would usually be meeting from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Fridays. I'll be available via email, via Skype to help you out. Skype is going to be a real help as we continue because it's going to allow for screen sharing. So just in case any of you are having technical difficulties, I would be able to see your screen and help you in real time. So I really encourage everyone to request a Skype appointment with me. I want to make myself as accessible to you as possible because I know that we are in uncharted territory now and we're all learning as we go. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me to set up an appointment. And from there, we can jump right into our first demonstration. This lecture series is only going to be made up of 2 videos, so I'm reinforcing lessons that we learned from lesson 1. I want you to have more practice with keyframing, animation, effects, but I'm also throwing in some new advanced skills, and this first video is going to focus on, again, animation. We're working with video files, we're working with a logo, but we're going to be incorporating something called track matting. So let's get started. So before we import anything, let's go ahead and save our project file. So on your external hard drives, just like how I asked you to make a Forest demo folder for the demo we did for After Effects Lesson 1, I would like you to make another folder on your external and call it Big Wave Demo. And I already have one all ready to go, Big Wave Demo. And then in your Big Wave Demo on Blackboard, there's going to be a link to a Google Drive folder where you're going to be able to download surfing.mov, fish.mp4, and a MP3 file, and then the logo file, the apeak logo.psd file that we actually used in the Forest demo. So you're going to download those 4 files from a link to a Google Drive folder that I'm putting on Blackboard because Blackboard can't support these videos that I learned, so I had to find a third-party way to host them. So once you have those files loaded in your folder, we're going to save our .aep, Big Wave Demo. We're going to save that in that folder. And then we're going to go ahead and import our footage. So we should all know how to import footage. So I'm going to import surfing, I'm going to import fish, and I'm going to import my music. Now I'm not importing my logo at the moment because I do want to import that as separate layers. I want to maintain the layers. So I'm going to import these as footage, and then I'm going to go back and import this as a composition with retaining the layers. So I'm going to go ahead and open those. And then I'm going to go back to my import window, and I'm going to import this as a composition and retain layer sizes. Say open. edible layer styles, keep that. Okay. Now remember, when this happens, we do get a composition. I don't want to use this composition, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And now we have our two layers. We have our logo layer and we have our text layer. We're just going to be using the logo layer for this one, so if you do want to delete the text, you can, but I'm just going to leave it. So I'm going to go ahead and start a composition from the surfing footage because I want to retain the composition settings from this file. I want the resolution to be like this, and we might cut this a little bit from 15 seconds, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to make this my new composition, so I'm just going to drop it onto the composition icon. Composition is going to form. Let's just rename this to Big Wave Demo to avoid confusion, and now we have our footage. Now before we get started with editing, I just want to show you what we are striving for. So here is our end goal. Okay, so if we break this down and we look at it critically, we see that we have a fade in from 0 to 1 seconds. Then from 0 to 6 seconds, we see that we have a color change. So we're going from a black and white style in order to reveal the full color. So After Effects has a lot of color presets and effects to help you make dramatic productions. So we're going to play with that a little bit. So this is like a noir effect into full color. And then at the 6-second mark, we see that we have a logo start to wave in. And within the logo, you see that we have different footage. So in this case, it's an Under the Sea theme. So we see that it comes in on a path, it stops, it scales up, and then we have a text reveal. And then from seconds 11 to 12, we have a subtle fade out. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so here is our footage. And if you notice, this footage we have is 15 seconds, but our final product was 12. So we shaved about 3 seconds off the end of the footage. So if we go and we snap our current time indicator to the 12-second mark, we can go ahead and snap the end of this so that we just have 12 seconds. And then I'm going to go ahead and close in our workspace bar so that when we are ready to play and export, we will only export what we do from 0 seconds to 12 seconds. And I'm also going to move this little ruler bar in order to increase the size of my timeline a little bit more. Okay. So now the first thing we had in the video is we did a simple fade in from 0 seconds to 1 second. So this should be just repeat for everybody. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open the transform opacity property, and you can do that by twirling down your arrow, going to transform, or you can just simply hit the T key. So we're going to go ahead and set some keyframes to do our fade in. Should be easy for everybody after the water and road trip assignment. So, okay, and now I have my simple fade in. Watch it one more time. Okay, good. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to work on is we're going to work on the color change from that noir effect into full color. So we're going to go ahead and with our, if you want to keep your keyframe open, you can. I'm just going to close mine. So to close it, to hide and reveal your keyframes, just hit the U key. So I'm just going to close that for now. So I'm going to go up to my effects window up here, and I'm going to go to color correction, and you can see that there are a lot of different options. There's a lot of different effects. There's hundreds of effects. I invite you to explore them and experiment with them as you get more comfortable with the software, because there are a lot of cool things. Too much for me to show you in the limited amount of time we have to focus on After Effects this semester, but there are a lot of cool things, so please experiment and see what you can create. Okay, so again, I'm going to go to Effects, Color Correction, and I'm going to go to Lumetri Color. So I'm going to go ahead and open that, and then I'm going to twirl down my Creative window, and then here we have Look. So right now it's at none because we haven't applied anything, but what I'm going to do is, again, like there's a lot of different color effects. I invite you to experiment with them, but for this one we're going to use SL Noir 1965. So if I apply that, notice that it applies to the entire clip, but if we remember our sample footage, we only want it to be in black and white up to the 6-second mark. So that is very easy to keyframe. So we're going to set our first keyframe for intensity, because if you notice intensity, if I just scroll to the middle, as I scroll through this, if I do 0 intensity, we have full color, 100. I can go all the way up to 200, but that's a little like too much, but 100 seems to be a perfect balance to get that black and white noir effect that we are striving for. So I'm going to go ahead at my 0 mark, my 0-second mark, and I'm going to set a keyframe for 100, and then I'm going to snap to my 6-second mark, and I'm going to change that to 0. So now if we play it from the 0-second mark, you can see that we have a subtle color change happening within this 6-second period. Now, remember, After Effects, it takes a while to render these changes sometimes, so if you're experiencing these lags, it's completely normal. This is 100% expected. So I'm going to go ahead and restart this now that our green render bar is full. And we see that we have a nice subtle color change from black and white palette to a full color palette. Also, if you notice, as you scroll between 0 and 6 seconds, your intensity value is changing. That's another way to see that you applied the keyframes correctly. Okay, so that was the easy part. Now we're going to get to the more challenging part of this demonstration. So let's go ahead and refer back to our sample again. Okay, so at the 6-second mark is when we see the corner of our logo start to form, start to come into frame. So let's go ahead and drop our logo into our timeline. Now, if you still have your effects control panel open, you should be able to just toggle right back to your project, or you can use or you can close this panel. I don't recommend you closing the panel, but you can close it and it will bring you back to project. But let's just click on it and let's drop our logo layer into our timeline. Okay, now really big. So let's go ahead and shrink it a little bit. So we're going to play with the scale property. So you can just go ahead and hit the S button on your keyboard to activate the scale property. And I'm just going to bring it down to about, let's see, I'll bring it down to about 16%. And if you can't get it exactly with scrolling, like I couldn't, you can just go ahead and type 16 into the space right here. Okay, so now that we have our logo placed in the center, we notice that we need it to follow some kind of path. So this, what we're about to create right now, is called a mask path. So that's just basically drawing a line and having your layer use that line as a movement path. So let's go ahead and start making this path. So just because it's just personal preference, I'm going to go ahead and just hide this layer so that I can focus on my path. So it doesn't matter where your current time indicator is right now, but we are actually going to draw this path first on our background layer or our surfing layer. So we're going to use the pen tool, and we're going to draw some waves. So we notice that we start from the lower left-hand corner, and we have about 2 waves before we stop and we scale up. Okay, so when I draw paths, I usually like to turn on my title action safe grid so that I don't go out of frame, and it also helps me make straighter lines. So I'm going to go ahead and use my pen tool, and I'm going to create a path on my surfing.mov layer. And when I do this, the first point that I make, I'm just going to click once. But then the rest of the points I make, I'm going to hold down my mouse before I let go in order for these little bars to form. And you can see that they're helping me make my wave formations. So I'm going to go ahead. So I'm going to click and hold, click and hold. If you do mess up for any reason, you can always let go and do Command Z. And my last point, I'm just going to click once. Now, if you're not happy with the way your mask looks, your mask path looks, with the pen tool still activated, you can click on these points and you can rearrange, and you can use the bars to make your waves more uniform, which I'm doing right now. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. It's not going to look just like our sample video, but we can try our best. And let's see. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so once we have made our revisions, we can see that we have a mask option that came. If you don't see this, you can click on the surf.mov and hit the M key to open your mask path. So we're going to select all of this, and we're going to copy, and then on our logo layer, we're going to hit the P key for position, click on the position property. We're going to come over here and we're going to click on our current time indicator with our position property selected, and we're going to paste, and you can see that a bunch of keyframes have been made. And if we unhide our layer logo, we can see that our logo is now following our mask path. Okay, now if you notice in our demo here, our logo follows the path almost like it's diving. So it's not doing this linear, just standing straight up like this. So after we have applied our keyframes, we want to go up to the layer window, transform, and we want to click on the auto orient option. And then we are going to choose orient along path. Now once we apply that, you can see that now our logo is moving along our path as though it's diving. But if you see at the end, our logo is not standing straight like our sample video. So how can we fix that? So in After Effects, in our toolbar, we have this rotation tool. So if we take this rotation tool with our logo layer selected, we can rotate our logo so that it ends straight. So just have to ballpark here. This looks straight to me, so I'm happy with that. And now if we go back and play our path, you can see that our logo has adjusted its form so that it ends up being straight at the end of our mask path. Okay, play it one more time. Okay, and then from seconds 8 to 10, we also had a scale increase. So we can go ahead and we can set those keyframes. And we can set a keyframe at 8 seconds. And then at 10 seconds, I will increase it to about 22. We can go ahead and preview that. Okay, it's looking good. It's coming together. Okay, so now in our video, we also notice that we have different footage actually in our logo. So this is where we get into track matting. So by definition, track matting allows for an invisible layer that is used to control the opacity of the parent layer chosen. So essentially, it replaces the alpha channel of the layer that it's being applied to. So this fish footage here is filling in the alpha layer of our logo. So how do we do that? It's actually very simple. So let's go back into our project, and I'm going to hide my keyframe layers. And I'm going to take this fish footage and I'm going to drop it in between our logo layer and our surfing layer. So obviously this is covering our surfing layer, but what we are going to do, so it's very simple to do. So we're just going to go into our timeline, and so here, notice we have something down here that says toggle switches and modes. So right now we have our switches panel activated. So this is like motion blur, 3D layers. We're going to get into this a little later in the next demo. But if you have your switches panel active, I want you to go down and click on this button so we can change to our mode panel. And notice right here we have something for track matte. So with our fish layer selected, we are going to make it so that the fish layer replaces the alpha matte of our logo layer. So we're going to go ahead and click on that, and notice that our fish footage is no longer obscuring our surfing. If you notice, once we applied this track matte, our fish layer and our logo layer have become connected. So it's almost like linking layers in Photoshop, so just wanted to point that out. Also, you can move the background layer. You can move the fish layer around to reveal different areas of the footage. We don't have a lot of room here, but I mean, we can play around a little bit. Again, lagging is completely normal as we make these changes in After Effects. But once you are satisfied with the placement of your logo and the footage that is behind it, we can go ahead and work on the last parts of our project. Okay, so if we come back to our sample, wrong sample, sorry about that. That's actually your homework. Come back to our sample. So from at the 9-second mark here, we have the reveal of some text. And then we have a simple fade out. And then of course we have to put our music track. But let's work on the text layer right now. So at the 9-second mark, right before our logo fully scales up, we have some text reveal. So let's go ahead and do that. So make sure that your title, action, safe headings are still active. And let's go ahead and put some text. Okay. So we can add text by just using our text tool found in our toolbar. And we can just make a text box. And here in our character panel, we can change things like color, font, size. I can already tell that my font size is going to be too big, so I'm going to go ahead and just make this smaller. I want my color to be white, and I'm okay with Arial black. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in big waves. Okay, so I'm still pretty big font size wise, so gonna shrink that a little bit, and then I'm gonna use my move tool. I'm just gonna position this kind of in the center of my logo, and that's pretty good. And then I'm just going to apply a simple opacity keyframe for my fade in effect. Okay, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to use T to open opacity. At the 9-second mark, I'm going to set a keyframe for 0. At the 10-second mark, it will be 100. And now I get a simple fade in. Now, the last couple things I have to do, put my fade out keyframes. So I'll start with my surfing layer. So I'm going to open T again, press the T key to open my opacity. So I'm going to set a keyframe here. Everybody should have a lot of practice doing this, so this is nothing new. I'm going to copy these keyframes and I'm going to apply them to my logo layer. And I will apply it to my text layer. I don't have to apply it to my fish layer because remember, our logo layer and our fish layer are now connected after the track matting. So now let's make sure that our changes were applied. Very nice. And then the last thing I'm going to do is bring in my music track. And I'm going to set my fade out just like before. Okay, and now it's going to take a little bit of time to render because we've made lots of changes. Again, this is perfectly normal. The slow-mo noise and everything, that's perfectly normal. But we can see everything. Everything is how it should be. So I'm just going to go ahead and render my project. So I'm going to go with File, Export, Add to Render Queue. I'm going to specify my output destination. Save it in my folder, save, and hit render. And then once you watch it render, after it's done rendering, you want to open it in QuickTime, make sure it converts, and then you should be able to upload this right to YouTube. The assignment that I am asking you to complete on your own is almost identical to what we did in this demonstration. Same techniques, same tools, and I will have that sample for you and all the materials you need on Blackboard. So when you're ready, click on the next video and let's get started on our second demonstration of our After Effects Lesson 2 lecture series. Thanks for watching.